Hello and welcome to today's webinar on AVEVA Mobile Operator rounds. My name is Kevin Modlin. I'm going to introduce the topic a little bit and then toss over to Louis Talley, who's really the featured presenter for today. But first off, in case you're not familiar with InSource, let me give you a little bit about our company. Our company was formed about 24 years ago. We're entirely focused on manufacturing IT solutions and we're 100% employee owned. That means that every one of our employees has a vested interest in your success. Our vision is to revitalize manufacturing in America and be a catalyst for more than $1 billion in client transformations. We're well on our way with that. We've got a long ways to go, but we've got a good start on that. And our tagline is that technology alone is not enough. You might have experienced this, but we certainly have, that technology in and of itself typically doesn't solve problems for manufacturers. Problems get solved at the intersection of technology and people and the processes that they use to run the business day to day. Our offerings are spread across these 6 domains. So the tool we're talking about today, AVEVA Mobile Operator Rounds, is in the Asset Performance Management domain. You could say it's also in the Workforce Optimization domain, but it's not super critical which domain we put it in. I just want to give you some insight into what that tool is and what it might do. So again, the official product name is AVEVA Mobile Operator Rounds. I'm a little bit lazy, so I'll probably truncate that name as the webinar goes along. Anyway, as the name implies, this is a tool designed to facilitate electronic rounds and other use cases as you see spelled out in this slide. I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about key capabilities of the tool and exposing you to some example use cases. And then, as I said before, I'm going to toss to Louis Talley. He's going to do a live demo of the tool, so you get to see what it looks and feels like in action. So if this image reminds you of something that's happening at your facility, then you're in the right place. It's not uncommon for us to see people out filling out paper checklists and forms and filing that information in a file cabinet, and that's not probably particularly useful if that's what's happening with the data you're collecting. So what is AVEVA Mobile Operator Rounds? Well, it's a tool that enables the connected worker by allowing you to digitize those paper rounds so that you can extract significantly more value from the effort you're putting into those rounds today. It also adds modern capabilities like image and video capture, like location verification and decision support and pre-built integration. And we'll talk about more of those things as we move along here. So in terms of key capabilities, we already talked about digitizing operator rounds. I think that one's fairly easy to understand. A second point is that this tool can allow you to ensure consistent execution of best practices. And said another way, it's a tool that will allow you to codify electronically tribal knowledge that you might have in your let's say more mature operations staff that maybe doesn't exist in the newer folks you're hiring in the last year or 2 or 3. And then a third key capability is the ability to facilitate a communication path to stranded assets. We'll take a look at that in detail in just a minute. So let's drill into use cases. The first use case is operator rounds with decision support. But what do we mean by decision support in this case? Well, many plants have operations and maintenance staff doing rounds with clipboards. Even if the paper form that they're filling out has expected ranges, it can be easy to overlook that, and often there's no guidance on what to do if a value is outside of one of those ranges, and for sure there's no mechanism for enforcing that. AVEVA Mobile is a tool that can help you with those things. It can encode the required logic, like operating limits, and prompt the operator to take some action when the actual conditions differ from what was expected. So that's what we mean by decision support. Use case number 2 is around collecting stranded data. That's fairly self-explanatory, and the stranded asset that you're collecting data from might look like a mobile crusher at the bottom of a quarry, or it might look like a remote pumping station. Either way, we can capture the relevant information digitally using AVEVA Mobile. The ability to store and trend that information over time is built into the tool, so the person that has boots on the ground can see how this value is changing over time. Additionally, we can simply push that data to a local historian, to Insight, which is AVEVA's historian in the cloud, to System Platform, and to many other AVEVA and non-AVEVA systems. A third use case is inspection rounds. In practice, this is very similar to what we described before as an operator round, but inspections are often done for safety reasons and sometimes for regulatory compliance. Digitizing these allows you to say with certainty that the round was completed, that it was completed on time, who completed it, whether or not any anomalies were detected, and when the last time an anomaly was detected. These things are easily enabled by Aviva Mobile and much more difficult if you've got to search through a file cabinet to find the answers to those things. The fourth use case is positive asset identification. Now, this might be more like a feature than a standalone use case, but since I get to make up the rules for this presentation, I'm calling it a use case. To explore this, imagine that you're a relatively new operator at Acme Industries. You've been on the job for 3 months, and you've been through the CIP setup process several times with a mentor. Your mentor has been at the plant for 16 years since it was built, and she can identify every piece of equipment and valve with her eyes closed. You're not quite that confident yet, and when you get to the step on the paper form that says critical, verify that the chemical clean return valve is closed, you stand there for a moment scratching your head trying to remember which of these valves that is. Well, imagine if a mobile device could help you verify that. Aviva Mobile can do just that using a barcode, a QR code, or even an RFID tag. This can help you ensure that you're at the correct asset or location, and it can inhibit the next step in that round if you're not in the right place. The application is also operating system agnostic, as there's a Windows app and there's also native iOS and Android apps. So you can choose whatever whatever hardware works best for you. Additionally, you can leverage wired and wireless peripherals to improve the types and quality of data that you're collecting. Things like Bluetooth vibration sensors or temperature sensors or others. But things for you to consider as I wind down my part of the presentation. What do you do with the information that gets collected from rounds today? What could you do with a more intelligent system that enforced best practices, or that provided in-the-moment decision support, that verified the user is at the location you expect them to be at, that allowed for the easy collection of images or video to document as-found conditions, that easily connected to your other systems so that the data you're collecting here could be correlated with other systems, that allowed for electronic signatures, and more. Well, I'm going to turn it over to Louis Talley, who's going to go through a live demo at this point. Feel free to drop questions in the Q&A, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. So over to you, Louis.
Hello, and thanks, Kevin. I'm Louis Talley, and today I'm going to be showing you a product demonstration of the AVEVA Mobile Operator rounds. If you're sitting here viewing this spreadsheet is probably near and dear to your heart. This represents a data collection round for an asset. So you can see at the top that we have air compressor 1, and we've got some measured data. So in this case, there's 13 or 14 points that I have, some counters. And if we zoom out, what we'll notice about this is there's a bunch of air compressors. So presumably someone would be collecting this data once an hour, several times a shift. They would be going out and writing this down. So what we've done is a couple of things. We've put this into the AVEVA Mobile Operator round software, and we've also reimagined it a little bit. So one of the use case scenarios that Kevin showed you was some location-based services. So how do I ensure that I'm at the right asset? And there's a number of different ways to do this. One of the ways that we've chosen to do this is with just a QR code. So I'm going to go ahead and paste this in here because we're sitting here at my house, but this would represent putting this QR code on the actual asset out in the field. So when I'm doing the demo and I'm walking around with the handheld device, I'm going to scan this QR code to show you that I'm at air compressor 1. So this is the focus of the demo that I'm going to show you, these air compressor rounds. And I've modeled one air compressor round to show you a couple of neat things that I can do with the software. So let's shift gears and look at the actual software now. So what you're looking at now is called the Procedure Builder. So think of this as the studio that I'm going to use to build and represent how I want my data collection round to operate and interact with. So it's all drag and drop and very easy to use. So for instance, when I have air compressor 1, I can do things like copy and paste. I'll do Control C to copy and come up here, Control V to paste it. and I can go down and say that's air compressor 2, and all of the subtasks get copied with it. So it's very easy to use. So you'll notice this is called a task group. So what I did to model this particular round that you see here is just drag and drop these tasks over. So for air compressor 1, I have the compressor outlet PSI, and it's a numerical value, so I can do things like control how the input is put in. So in this case, I haven't put any restrictions on it. So that'll do things like stop fat fingering values and things like that. I'm not doing any of that here, but just to show you that you could do that if you wanted to. One of the things I have taken advantage of, to Kevin's use case that he talked about earlier, is that I'm going to make this a scannable point. So this is where I tie back to what the actual asset is. So I've defined some assets in my system, and I'm going to make this a scan point. And this ties back to the actual asset. So I can be sure that I'm at the appropriate asset. So there's a number of different ways to do that. You know, we've chosen, as I said, to do it with a QR code, but you can do it with barcode, Bluetooth beacons, RFID, things like that. So it's pretty simple in terms of just collecting the data. So I come in here, give it a name, and I say it's a data type. I can associate a tag or a default value with that if I want to. And I go through, and you can copy and paste and drag and drop and things like that. So if I'm just doing basic data collection, like if we think back to that spreadsheet, it's just basic data collection. There's no logic in there, but that's really only doing half of the task that we need to do, because we have this mobile decision support platform in our hand that's an intelligent computer application. Why don't we do some stuff with it? So this is where conditions and decisions come into play. Right, so now I can say that when the compressor outlet PSI is, for instance, above 60 or less than or equal to 62, I'm going to do something. And that something could be just to flag it. It could be, hey, you know, this is an abnormally high reading. We want to indicate that on the report. So no action is required by the person executing the round, just to kind of let you know. But we can also take that a step further. And this is another one of the use cases that Kevin said, that for instance, if it's an abnormally high value, right, maybe I want to go back and say, hey, are you sure you entered that value in right? Let's sort of go back and re-enter that in, right? Or I can do things like, you know, if the value is above a certain thing, I can, in this case, notify maintenance. So this just throws a little pop-up that you'll see on the device, but it could also generate any of the actions here. Could generate a work order request, call another procedure, jump to another place in the logic, allow the person executing the round to enter in a note or some additional information as to what's going on. All right, so you have some choices here. So also from here, I can push this data out to all types of external systems, as Kevin mentioned. So if I want to push that out to the Wonderware historian, I can do that by just dragging and dropping that, right? Or I want to push that out to my SCADA HMI Wonderware InTouch application or Wonderware System Platform or Insight or etc. I call it, you know, anywhere in the Wonderware world. Once we get it in our environment, we can sort of push that out anywhere that we want to. And then, of course, I can integrate to any sort of peripheral device that I want to, whether it's a Bluetooth temperature gun or an RFID tool or a barcode reader or something like that. You can see all of that stuff here. So in terms of building the round, it's very easy to do, very simple, very straightforward. Some of you may have seen when I've done a product demonstration in the past, when we could come to actual customer sites, I would literally get a customer to bring a piece of paper round, and I would build the round right there in front of them, hand them the device, let them go do the demo. So that's really how easy it is to do. So once you build the round, the next thing you do is use the schedule manager to schedule the round. Now in this case, I've said things like my round is dynamically available, but I've also gone in here and scheduled some rounds so you could see down here at the bottom. This gives you sort of a status overview. And I like to call this sort of the Outlook meeting manager, if you will. So all of your procedures that you've built show up over here. So when you want to schedule one of them, you literally just drop it on the calendar. And the reason why I call this the Outlook meeting manager is because if you can schedule a meeting in Outlook with Teams or whatever, you can use this tool. So basically you come in here and you would say, how do I want the behavior for this round to be? Can I schedule it as a recurring round? Can they pick it up early? How many recurrences? How often? What's the pattern? What sort of exceptions are there, if any? And then, if they want to, can they pick it up early, or do they have extra time to complete it? So all that sort of factors in down here at the bottom into this little overall tasks view that I like. And you could set different time spans, but you sort of get a glance visually of what's going on with the system. What's been done, what's been missed. You can see I've done some rounds today where you can see a little check mark there. I've got some that I'm supposed to be doing now, as well as this morning I had some that I missed. So just a neat sort of little schedule manager that shows you from a scheduling perspective what's going on with your rounds. So from a configuration perspective, that's really it. So let's shift gears now and let's go execute the round that we've just put in. So bear with me one second while I switch to my iPad. So we're going to mirror the display of the iPad. So you're seeing what I'm seeing on the iPad. Well, in just a second. All right. Let's drag this over here so we can see a little bit better. Okay. So this is what a user who is using the software from the perspective of the operator would see, right? So you can see the iPad here. This is what I'm seeing. So from the dashboard, I can see all types of things like what's due, what's in progress, what's been completed, what's been missed. So in this case, I'm just going to quickly go through and show you one of the procedures on demand that I have set up in my system. So in this case, this is the air compressor round that I just talked about. So we've reimagined this round to include a location. So let's slide this over here to the side. Slide it over here, sorry. We've reimagined this to include a location. Remember, I added the QR code there in the G and H column. And so this is actually asking me to select the asset. Now, I'm sitting here at my desk, and this is on my laptop. But pretend that I'm walking around, and I'm going to go scan the QR code of the actual asset. So I'm going to bring up the asset picker. And in this case, I don't have a ton of assets, so it's not that big of a deal. But to Kevin's point, maybe I can blindly, with my eyes closed, define which asset I'm at. Maybe I can't. Maybe this list is a long list. This list can be imported from your CMMS system or whatever, some external system or something like that. So I could click on this, right? Or I could actually go scan, right? So I'm going to click on scan, and it's going to bring up the scanner, right? So I'm going to scan the QR code. And now what it's done is it's narrowed that list down for me, right? So this is one way to do it. There are other ways to do it where you don't bring up the asset list. This is just the way that I set this round up. So I'll go ahead and confirm that this is the asset that I want to use, and nothing big exciting happened other than it associated this asset with this particular round that I'm doing. Behind the scenes, what's also happening is that the subtasks below it are now unlocked. So when I built this round, I said, hey, if you're not at the right asset, and if that asset is not running, it doesn't make sense to go collect the data points for the piece of equipment that you're talking about, right? So obviously it's running, so I can see here's the data values. So let's slide this back over here so we can focus more on this, all right? So this is, again, the operator perspective. So one of the neat things that you can do with this that you can't do with a piece of paper is you can see that on the device, I actually have the trend values actually shown on the screen here. So you can switch between trend mode and actual value mode. Now remember, I don't have any restrictions put in here, right? Except for we do have those checks on some of the values. So I'm going to cause some failures to occur, right? Intentionally. Oops, actually, let's pick 11. And also, we haven't done things like said, you have to do all the tasks. So there's nothing stopping me from skipping a task, right? So if I wanted to skip a task, I could, or I can go in here and perhaps attach a photo, right? So we'll take a photo of well, that's kind of cool. So we'll take a photo of the actual camera within the camera within the camera, right? So we'll go back. This could be you're taking a picture of a cracked housing on a pump or something like that. So in this case, I'll say, we'll have some crazy values here. Put some of the counter values in, right? So this thing's been running for quite a while. And you'll notice there's air compressor 2, so I had copied and pasted that in. The same thing applies. So in this case, I won't go through. I'll probably just skip through this and skip along to the end. Remember, I can enforce the order and things like that in the interest of time. Now, one of the neat things I've done with this procedure is that I've said that when you complete this procedure, you must digitally sign, well, a handwriting sign, if you will. So, I'm actually the one that's doing this procedure. And I'll go up here and I'll actually save this. And now I'm finished with my round. I could go do another round. I could be finished for the day. Some more time might go by. I might do another round. But whenever I'm finished, I'm actually going to go through and synchronize back with the AVEVA Mobile Operator software. So now it's done. So now let's shift gears back and look at what a consumer of data from the system, a report user, might see. So bear with me. We're going to shift back into the actual software. So now the reporting is all handled via what we call the Auditor Plus. So all this information is going into a database. So there's a number of different ways that I can get at this information. One of the things that Kevin talked about is replacing those mountains of paperwork with a digital environment. So if I need to go back to the piece of paper, right, I have it all electronically. I can automatically do things like create PDFs. So we'll see that here in just a second. But the way that you interact with this is just by double-clicking on it. There's other ways to consume this data. There's a number of SSRS reports as well. So if you want to consume the data from a web browser, you can do that. I'm just going to show you the Auditor Plus. So what is this useful for? So from here, I can see at a high level, everything that was done in the round, everything that was skipped, who did every step in the round, what time that step was done, if there were any exceptions. So you can see I have things that are color-coded. So this is all configurable within the software. So at a high level, you can see things like what was done, what was skipped, right? So this little X indicates that this conditional test occurred, but was not true, right? So here, this was. We've got to notify maintenance. Actually, sorry, this one wasn't because we were in the range here. So we can also go down and we can see the attachment, right? Remember the picture of the picture that I took? Right? So there's the picture of the picture of the picture of the picture of my laptop, right? So all that gets attached to the actual round, right? So we can see, here's my actual signature, right? So all of this information gets stored with the round. Let's say that we had, some sort of a problem and we needed to override some values here. Let's say that's not 34, that's 44, right? So you can see that, if I back out and come back into this, right, this little pencil here indicates that I've overridden the value, right? So of course this is controlled through security and I have administrative access to it and things like that. But you can see from an override perspective, it keeps both the original and the overridden value, right? Now here's where it's really cool. So, 2021, let's go all the way back to the piece of paper here. So if we click on the Create PDF Report, we can zoom that out to a piece of paper. And you can see here, there's my digital signature. There's all the tasks and the times that everything was executed from within the round, what was done, what was skipped. So you can see things that don't have a check next to it were things that were skipped. So also, lastly, when I'm finished with this, if I want to, I can actually go through and approve this round. So when I approve a round, it gets marked as being approved, right? And so you can see here I've intentionally not approved some rounds. So you can see what hasn't been approved and what has been approved. So thank you very much. This concludes the demo of the AVEVA Mobile Operator rounds. Drop a question in the chat if you have any questions. Thank you.